Hello and welcome to Talking China. I'm John Goodrich.
And I'm Yang Xinmeng. Today we're going to look at what signals are coming out of this year's two sessions and what they might mean in today's uncertain global environment.
Yes, predictability, certainty and realism have been core messages at the 2026 two sessions so far, as China emphasizes its position as a stabilizing force and reliable partner in an increasingly uncertain world. Today we're going to take a look at the underlying reasons behind China's stability, explore how this affects the Chinese people, and assess the implications internationally. To do this, we're going to enlist the help of our guests, Xiaolu and Long Chen. Thank you both for joining us, and could you both briefly introduce yourselves to our viewers?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here, dear host. And hello to all the online observers and the audiences. This is Xiaolu from Renmin University of China. Basically, I have been trained as a political scientist with the comparative perspective. So basically, I'm doing comparative politics and also Chinese political study. But now I'm working in the School of CPC History and Party Building. So basically, I trace back the history of the CPC's historical trajectory, the current institutional innovation, theoretical innovation, and also basically leadership under the CPC. So also I work for the National Academy of the Development Strategies as a think tank. I'm very kind of delighted to be joined here.
Thank you so much. How about you, Long Chen? Could you give us a brief introduction?
Definitely. And nice to meet you, distinguished hosts. And hello to all the audience online. And my name is Long Chen. And I'm an assistant researcher at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies, Renmin University of China. And my research interests primarily focus on the global south and the BRICS. So it is a great honor to have this opportunity today to share with you my thoughts on the two sessions, China and the world.
That's great. Thanks again for joining us. First, we're going to delve into China's whole process people's democracy. Now, the term democracy means different things to different people, often depending on where they live and what they've experienced. Most people's concept of democracy in my country, the UK, for example, is quite different to that in China, where participation at all stages of the process is a central feature. So perhaps to start us off, Xiaolu, you could give us a summary of how China's whole process people's democracy actually works.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Well, actually, the concept of the whole process people's democracy first appeared in the year 2019. Actually, it was in the autumn, or we can say the November, particularly November in the year 2019, when General Secretary Xi Jinping visited, he had an inspection tour to Shanghai, particularly to a very grassroots level, the liaison office, the liaison kind of station for the lawmaker, the deputies, basically the deputies of this regional level. And he firstly mentioned the argument that Chinese democracy or the people's democracy is a whole process one. So not only in democracy in China refers to the voting procedure, or we can say the election procedure, but also it includes the decision making, or the procedure before, or let's say ahead of decision making, for example, the consultation. And even more important thing is that once the decision is made, or once the policies has been made, during the policy implementation, there also are a lot of democratic procedure. For example, people can use different kind of organs and channels to oversight, or even to, let's say, to supervise, in terms of supervise these local cadres and officials, whether they are doing good or bad, whether they are doing in accordance with the so-called the top institutional designing. So I think this whole process people's democracy firstly mentioned in 2019, but actually this whole process people's democracy had a very long history in China, even before 1949. When the CPC was still a revolutionary party in the local area. For example, in the northwestern area, in the Shanganning border area, the Shanxi, Gansu, and the Ningxia, 3 provinces border area during the anti-Japanese war period. Actually, under the leadership of the CPC back then, the local residents can also back then they already used this kind of voting. They used the beam to vote their favorable kind of cadres, particularly in the local grassroots level, the village level, and the township level. And then right after the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, even before the National People's Congress was established in 1954, in the early days of the PRC, from 49 to 54, well, not only the national level, but also provincial level, the city level, the county level, and even the township level, there were a lot of people's representatives or people's kind of assembly back then. So we can have a very kind of a vision that China had a long history of the whole process, people's democracy, not only including voting procedure, but also including decision making, decision consultation, and also the supervision during the decision or policy implementation. So that's what we can understand China's democracy is a whole process.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much. Really good historical background. One thing I'm quite interested in, Xiaolu, if I could just follow up quickly, is we often hear about policies which are fitted to suit the conditions of a locality, particularly in poverty alleviation or rural revitalization. Is this a framing we can also put on China's system, that it's a system which is designed or has evolved to best suit the conditions of the country?
Yes. That would be a very good point in terms of this. Particularly, I would like to follow your point on the rural revitalization, or particularly the poverty reduction, the process, or in this kind of the huge, if I may say so, that would be a huge social engineering project. Well, you know that since 2012, well, from the year 2012 to the year 2020, during the 8 years of the poverty reduction and the poverty eradication project, China has totally leveled more than 98 million people out of the absolute poverty. And during this process, from the beginning of the designing to the particular decision making, and even to the very, very kind of particular how to use the money, how to use the different kind of method to eradicate the poverty, and how to revitalize the rural area, and how to make the rural society and the rural and the village more vital and more prosperous. During all this kind of process, different kind of officials and cadres in different levels, they hear what the people kind of opinion, and they just put the people's opinion into the process of decision making. In terms of this, in my opinion, that would be a more dynamic and a more, let's say, energetic policy outputting process, and that would be also the other dimension of Chinese democracy. It's more functional, it's more outcome oriented, rather than just focusing on some kind of a procedure like the decoration. It's not like that.
A practical purpose to it. Now, Simon, you've spent a lot of time at the 2 sessions a few times, including this year, and a lot of time traveling around China. Could you give us some of your experiences about grassroots governance?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually my 7th year covering the 2 sessions. And one thing I've really noticed is how whole process people's democracy actually happens on the ground. And a great example is actually Zoya Beksidi. She is an NPC deputy from Xinjiang Autonomous Region, and I've been following her for a few years now. And this year, before the session started, I actually went to her hometown to see how she works on the grassroots level. And that's where you can really see how people's voices are collected and brought into national discussions. So Zoya's got a lot of identities and make her perspective really interesting. So she is ethnic Kazakh, so she can represent the voices from of ethnic minority communities, which is especially relevant this year with the draft law on promoting ethnic unity and progress. And also she's quite young, around my age, so she brings the kind of questions that younger people really care about and really shortens the distance between, the sessions and the younger generation. And also her professional background is actually archaeology. So that can sound pretty niche, but it really gives her real authority in her field, like protecting immovable cultural heritage in Xinjiang's desert or cave paintings. So what's striking to me is that those are very, very small and very specific issues, like protecting this painting or preserving this rock or stone. But they are still picked up through the national legislative system because someone is out there doing the work on the ground year after year. And that's actually the essence I see of grassroots whole process democracy, because without that everyday experience, like walking the land, talking to people, understanding the local realities, you just wouldn't capture those seemingly small details that actually reflect so many different dimensions of national policy and public life. So watching deputies like her work, I really feel that the two sessions are not big headlines. They are really built on this long, detailed process where people at a very local level can shape decisions at the highest level. Yeah.
And have you managed to catch up with her at these two sessions?
Yeah. So I went to, she's from Altai, Xinjiang. I went there in February, and I actually met her on the opening day of the MPC this year. And I'm publishing, the video today.
Oh,
so,
one to watch out for. Great. So the two sessions are clearly underway, and one of the key things that's being deliberated there and reviewed is the 5-year plan for the 15th 5-year plan for the 2026 to 2030 period. Longchen, I wonder if you could come in here and help us out by explaining to our viewers exactly what a 5-year plan is and maybe some of its benefits.
Okay, first I'd like to put China's development within a global framework. And during the 40th 5-year plan period, and China achieved a transformation from follower to pioneer runner and even leader in multiple key areas. So take technological innovation as an example. And according to the Global Innovation Index 2025, and which released by the World Intellectual Property Organization, China's ranking has risen to 10th place globally and entering the global top 10 for the first time, and ranking first among the 36 upper middle income economies, a cumulative climb of 25 places since 2030. And in the field of a green transition, the 40th 5-year plan period marks the first 5-year plan since China launched its carbon peak and carbon neutrality goals. It was precisely during this period that China built the world's largest and fastest growing renewable energy system. The scale of new energy storage has lived to first in the world, with new energy patterns accounting for over 40% of the global total. And the production and the sales of the new energy vehicle have remained number one globally for 10 consecutive years. And achievements have been made in industrial structure, energy transition, and resources efficiency, providing critical support for global climate governance. And second, I'd like to examine China's experience sharing through global social cooperation. And as a researcher focused on the global south, I pay more attention to how China translates this development experience into shareable public goods. In the agricultural sector, for example, during the 40th 5-year plan period, Chinese experts combined the targeted poverty alleviation experience accumulated in China with agricultural technologies and brought them to Africa. In Burundi, Chinese agriculture experts promoted the cultivation of hybrid rice across 3,800 hectares and increasing yields by 40,000 pounds per season, significantly boosting Burundi's total rice output and lifting thousands of farmers out of poverty. And behind these projects lies the concrete practice of China's poverty reduction through development philosophy, not simply giving money or materials, but helping developing countries activate endogenous momentum through technology transfer and capacity building. That's my understanding.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. A really vibrant and achievement-filled period for sure. And that's certainly one of the themes that we've been looking at here at CGTN as well, the way that some of China's models can be examined and learned from elsewhere in the world. Xiaolu, could you give us a few of your successes of the 14th five-year period?
Yes. Thank you very much for the question again. So actually, talking about the five-year plan, I think it's time for us to get a little bit back to the origin of the five-year plan. Originally, the five-year plan was begun in 1953. Okay, so 1953 to 1956, that was the first five-year plan. But if you do a math, calculated in detail, actually the first five-year plan actually finished in less than 5 years, in the 53, 54, 55, and 56. By the end of the 56, the first five-year plan already finished. All the goals, all the projects, all these kind of infrastructures and other kind of goals have already been fulfilled by the end of 56. So I would like to say that the first four five-year plans, that was from 53 to the end of 76. Well, the first four five-year plans laid down the foundation of the industrialization of China, laid down the whole range of industrial sectors in China. And ever since the reform in 1978, we all know that the reform and opening up began in 1978. Actually, we should also notice that from 1980, that was the sixth five-year plan. So from the sixth five-year plan, China already started to do some kind of structural reform in order to embrace the outside world, in order to change China's economic and also the social sector. So from the sixth five-year plan on, the name of the five-year plan started to include the economic and the social, programs and projects, not only in the national economy, not only in the so-called industrialization and agricultural sector, but also all the social sectors, the education, the medical care, the housing, even the transportation, even also the care for the baby and the care for the elders and other, and so on and so forth. And I think that for this more than 70 years, China has been doing great job in terms of the long-term expectation management, using this five-year plan. So the five-year plan is not only an economic plan. It's not only a social and economic plan. It's already become a law-based governance channel. It's already become a cornerstone of China's law-based governance, because we also know that this year's NPC session will deliberate, discuss the draft law of the national development planning law, right? So in the future, the five-year plan will becoming the characters of China's governing or the China's governance system. So I think the five-year plan, the success of the Chinese five-year plan, not only can be reviewed in this kind of economic data and annual economic rates and other kind of thing, but also the maturity or the more and more mature of China's governing system in the future.
Thank you. And Simon, you were there to see the government work report be delivered by Premier Li Qiang as the NPC session opened. Mm-hmm. What were some of your reflections? Because he went over some of the achievements of the past and look forward to the future. Mm-hmm.
And I was actually inside the Great Hall when he delivered the report, and I feel this year people are really paying very close attention to what he said, because as we said, this is the first year of the new 5-year plan. So a lot of attention on whether the economy can get up to a strong start. Of course, there are big numbers like the growth target. But when you look at the numbers that connect more directly to people's daily lives, like education and health, I actually still have my notes from inside the hall.
Okay.
So there's 1 year of free preschool education benefited 14 million kids, and childcare subsidized reached 33 million families, and life expectancy moving up to 80. Senior high school enrollment hit 92% already, and also elderly care came up quite a bit too as well. For example, an increasing share of nursing type beds in elder care institutions. So when you hear these numbers together, you get a sense that the report is really trying to connect economic growth with people's quality of life. Things like raising families, education, healthcare, and aging. And also at the same time, innovation came up quite a bit too as well. AI, robotics, quantum tech, biotech. These are repeatedly emphasized. So it's very interesting that there's a strong focus on stability and livelihoods, and also there's a clear push for technological upgrading.
Fascinating. Xiaolu, Xinmeng gave some of her reflections there. Could you give us your assessment of the 15th five-year plan, some of the standout features for you?
Oh, yes. Actually, I've also, let's say, closely watched this report of the Premier Li Qiang actually on the afternoon of March 5th. So I actually focus more on this, let's say, the methodological principle in the next 5 years. Actually, when we look at the text of the 15th five-year plan, particularly the principles, I couldn't help but noticing that the first principle, the top one, well, there are 5 principles, right? But the first principle is still put the economy at the center of the work. So, well, in Chinese it's called treating the economy work as a priority. I think that would be the first one ever since 1987, the 13th Party Congress report. Because since the 13th Party's Congress report put this economic work as the priority, become the basic line of the CPC. That would be the guiding line. That was the foundational guiding of China. But I would like to say that during the 90s and the first decade of 21st century and the first half of the second decade of 21st century, people would know that the economic work still are the center of all the workers, but it does not appear in the text more frequently. But this year, or the 15th five-year plan in the text, well, putting the economy work as the priority has again become the priority of the work. So that would be my kind of notice, because I understand that this text would be, the signal not only for the Chinese people, but also for the rest of the world, because that it reveals that the Chinese leadership is very clear about what China will be facing in the future. Well, more internal and external challenging, more, let's say, the setbacks and more of this kind of uncertainty and unpredictability. But even during this kind of uncertainty and unpredictability, well, putting the economic work as the priority show the signal to the outside world that the Chinese leadership is still very confident to bring more predictability and certainty, not only to Chinese people, but also to the rest of the world. So I think that is why a lot of people, even the international China watchers, focus more on this 15th five-year plan and in this year's NPC session.
Thank you. Longchen, perhaps I can ask you a quick question now. The long-term planning, which China is well known for, gives us an essence of stability. It helps people make decisions for the future, and for businesses and investors, that's often seen as a core element when making a decision. From your research in the Global South, is this a benefit for Global South countries?
Yes, definitely. And as for this question, I have 2 ideas to share with our audience. The first is that the opportunities China brings to the world, looking ahead to the 50th year plan, that especially during the 15th five-year plan period, can be summarized as a more open market, a stronger engine of innovation, and a more committed green partner. For example, China is expanding openness in the service sector, meaning multinational companies like Starbucks and Tesla can not only sell products, but also deeply participate in China's consumption upgrade. And in technology, China is accelerating the development of artificial intelligence and new energy vehicles, and driving upgrades in global industrial chains. So this will provide many chances to the different countries around the world. And especially in green transition, China's vigorous development of wind power provides low-cost solutions for global climate governance. In other words, China's 55-year plan is not only a blueprint for domestic development, but also a new opportunity for global business and the countries in consumption, technology, and green cooperation. So there's three areas I believe that the investors around the world should pay more attention.
Thank you. Good insights. You mentioned artificial intelligence there, and it's becoming more and more of a part of our daily life and also part of our lives that we're not seeing yet. It's moving incredibly fast, and some of us, me included, don't quite know how to catch up sometimes. Xiaolu, could you tell us how AI is already transforming the lives of some people in China?
Yes. Well, we all know that actually last year, the year 2025, is the landmark of China's AI industry. Not only industry, but also this application to the almost all aspects of life. And also, well, interesting thing is that 2025, that year, also, well, signifies the 70th anniversary. The 70th anniversary of People's Republic of China's first long-term scientific and technological development plan. Well, although that plan was published in the year 1956, the plan was actually originally started in 1955 when a famous engineer, a famous scientist, Qian Juesen, came back from the U.S. to China in 1955. So 1955 was the year, particularly October, Qian Juesen returned to China. And last year, 2025 marked the 70th anniversary of Qian Juesen's getting back. Well, once he got back to China, not only Chairman Mao, but also other, departmental leaders and all these kind of scientist leaders and, strategy science leaders, they invite Qian Juesen and other returned scientists to develop China's first scientific and technological development plan. That was the first plan. So I think it was not a coincidence. I think it was not I think the AI success does not just come from nowhere. I don't believe, let's say, coincidence. I don't believe those kind of coming from nowhere. I believe the success of China's AI industry and China's AI application, well, comes from or resulted from China's long-term preparation for this kind of scientific and technological development. Because I believe that the science, particularly the breakthrough of science, the breakthrough of technology, well, should be, more preparation, should be longer and longer term preparation. And that would be, one of China's advantage, not only in the history, in the past, but also in the future. Because in the future, we are facing more and more, uncharted waters and, predictable challenges, all needed, preparation. So maybe before, 70 years ago, Chinese leaders did not know what will happen in the year 2025. But what they did in 1950s, what they prepared for China in 1950s, 1960s, well, set the foundation for the success of China's AI industry and other, scientific stuff.
That's so interesting. You always give us such a fascinating historical perspective. And also, that's another indication of the power of long-term planning and the impact it has. AI is exploding all around us, generally for good, as far as we know. Healthcare, education, all things to do with people's well-being. What are your reflections, Simone? What have you seen?
Well, I think the most recent example of China's AI or the new quality productive forces is actually the robots from the Spring Festival Gala. they went viral overseas. My feed was full of it. And actually, right after the Spring Festival, I went to visit a robotic company. They are not making full humanoid robots. They focus on robotic hands, actually. And that actually makes sense because if you want a robot to actually work, it all comes down to hands. Those fine, precise operation, that's the really hard part and also the core. So, and when I first entered the company, I saw a lab full of hands moving on their own. And I immediately thought of Wednesday. You know, have you watched it, the TV show, the TV drama?
I haven't seen it.
With a walking hand, a hand, just only a hand.
Oh, I know.
Called
yeah,
the thing.
Yeah.
So hundreds of hands moving on their own and learning different techniques, different skills. And the engineers there are actually called robot trainers. So they teach the robotic hands to do all sorts of tasks, like industrial stuff, like twisting screws or assembling the robots themselves. But the really tricky part is domestic life. They teach the robots to cook, even learning the flipping technique from Michelin star chefs, or doing precise therapy like traditional Chinese massage or spine adjustment. So they're basically building a skill library and digitizing human hand experience. And once a skill is in the system, any robotic hand can learn it and eventually help humans in daily life. So at the end of my interview, I actually asked the co-founder if he thinks robots will one day replace humans. And he said something I really liked. He said humans have always created amazing technologies, cars, planes, computers, things that far beyond our natural abilities. But they've always been tools, partners, not replacements. So that's exactly how he sees robots, not just machines or digital labor, but partners that work alongside humans.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's so much fun to do with AI and humanoids and so on, but so much practical application which can really help us. One aspect which I'm particularly interested in, Xiaolu, perhaps you could give us your thoughts on this. Is the regulation on AI able to catch up with the technology? It's moving so fast, and it's so difficult, particularly in countries around the world, for regulation to keep up, or for the policymakers to even understand the technology. Is that a problem going forward?
Well, actually, in my opinion, basically, China, during the 15th five-year plan, we know that we can compare the 15th five-year plan and the 14th five-year plan. We also noticed that in these two five-year plans, put this kind of self-reliance in this scientific and technological innovation. Well, the Chinese government put this self-reliance as the top priority in both five-year plans. So in my opinion, I think in the future, the theoretical innovation, the scientific innovation, the technological innovation should be more on Chinese kind of people, Chinese scientists and Chinese government, because we know that in the future, there will be more and more, let's say, challenges and unpredictable, this contradictions and other kind of difficulties in the future. So it would be a challenge, but I think in the future, Chinese people can also overcome all these kind of difficulties with their confidence and with their long-term prepared wisdom that has already become the characters of the China. Not only become Chinese people, but also become the characters of Chinese leadership. That is also one of the points I would like to make. Is that the Chinese science, the scientific and the technological innovation in China, well, they have been following a path of people-centric, let's say, philosophy in terms of this innovation. They focus more on whether this innovation can be, diffused to the civilized or the civic settings. For example, whether people's life could be improved due to the technological breakthrough innovation, whether more and more people can get benefits from this kind of scientific breakthrough. So I think that would be also a dimension for the people-centric philosophy of China.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, AI is just one of the areas in which China's working with global partners to review, to share information, to share experiences, to try and make sure it's safe and develops in a positive way for everybody. Longchen, can you tell us how important China's commitment to multilateral institutions and its pragmatism and its equal treatment for all countries, how important that is for countries, particularly developing countries?
First, I'd like to divide my opinions into three parts, and especially combined with the 15 years 5 plan. And first one go to open up a supersized market. China's 50th 5-year plan emphasizes expanding domestic demand and upgrading consumption, which will provide tangible market opportunities for the world, especially for global South countries. Let's take South Africa as an example. South Africa wine and minerals have gained higher added values and after entering the Chinese market and driving the country's shift from resource export to mid to high-end industrial chains. And this opening up build on a supersized market. It's not simply about commodity exchange. It leverages demand-side pool to drive industrial upgrading and economic diversification across global South countries. Second, it's about shared technological innovation, joint and research and R&D and industrial chain cooperation. The 15th 5-year plan proposed developing a new quality productive forces with a focus on cutting-edge fields such as artificial intelligence, just as mentioned by biogas gas and green energy, through BRICS innovation platforms, and promotes technological sharing and joint research and development. For example, Brazil's biotechnology advantages are being combined with China's agricultural technology to enhance food security and agricultural productivity. This cooperation is not a one-way technology transfer, but a synergy based on each party's strengths, enabling developing countries to genuinely participate in the restructuring of global industrial chains. And the third part go to shared green transformation, like climate governance and energy cooperation. And China has set carbon reduction targets, and it is promoting energy infrastructure connectivity collectively through the Green Belt and Road Initiative. So in the near future, we can see that many benefits which brought by China to the world will be more and more.
Thank you so much. It's fascinating to hear examples, practical examples of how China's synergies with other countries is helping both. So often we hear about it in theory, and to hear practical examples is really positive. Thank you. Charlotte, perhaps you could just give us a general sense. We've been talking a lot about stability in terms of China's decision-making, its long-term planning, its stable GDP over recent years, its realism in setting this year's GDP targets. Could you tell us how important you think China's stability is to the wider world?
Well, yes, that is also a very interesting question. Recently I have been thinking about the term civilization. I have been following a lot of great works, classical works of civilization, what civilization is, and where does the civilization come from, what are the origins of a civilization. And we know that Chinese leadership, particularly General Secretary Xi Jinping, used the word that's the human civilization, the new form of human civilization. Well, China set its goal to establish or to build a new form for human civilization. Well, if you would ask me what is the contribution, what will China contribute to the rest of the world, I would like to say, basically, in a general way, China will contribute to the rest of the world by establishing a new form of a civilization. And that new form of civilization is consisting of two sectors or two dimensions. The first dimension is institutions or system or governance. The second dimension is ideas or thoughts, or even, well, we can say thoughts. So Chinese thoughts and the Chinese institutions have always been, well, the two dimensions that China can do contribution to the rest of the world. Not only by now, not only in this new century, 21st century, new era, but also in history. Well, China has, in my opinion, China has been contributing to the rest of the world. Of course, China is part of the world, right? But before, the 1500, when different part of the world didn't know the existence of other continents, of other nations, well, they are the world by themselves. China has become this world. China is a world. Before other kind of people, knows China, connect to China. But when this globalization, ever since the first globalization in the first industrial revolution, well, I think that China has kept, contributing to the world by performing the institution and also the thought. In my opinion, the institution is how China is governed, how China, how Chinese society is governed, how Chinese, society with a huge population, with a vast geographical areas is governed and managed. Of course, we know that there are problems, there are challenges. Well, there are continuity and stability, obviously, right? So that's the contribution for the institution. And then thought or ideas. Well, China contribute to the rest of the world by, performing well in terms of multilateralism, by performing well in international cooperation, rather than making conflict, rather than making, all these kind of challenges. China is always welcoming different people from different part of the world to China, to invest, to know more about China. So that is more than economy. That is more than, China become the anchor of the world economy. So in my opinion, China's contribution to the rest of the world is by performing or by establishing a new form of human civilization, which includes thoughts and institutions.
Thank you so much. That's really fascinating. And as ever, thought-provoking as well. It's always nice to hear ideas and suggestions which are a little bit different from the ones we normally do. Thank you so much. So we're going to look at a little bit to the future now and some trends to look out for in 2026. Longchen, perhaps you could start, outline a few things that we should be keeping an eye out for in the year ahead.
Of course. And as we all know, that the world today stands at a crossroads of uncertainty. That China's 5-year plan serves as an anchor of certainty in an uncertain world, as ours distinguished host and ours guest has mentioned, that when the world is plagued by doubts about whether to cooperate, China's responds with action, a supersized market that continues to expand, and we are not closing our doors but opening them even wider. And the globalization promoted by China is also deeply aligned with the UN, just like aligned with the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So at solar power station in South Africa, Chinese technology is bringing light to communities plagued by power shortage. And this is not simply project contracting. It's a substantive response to the philosophy of promoting poverty reduction through development and grounding globalization in the place where developing countries need it most. And the last but not the most is that the most important is that the true certainty comes from the right to share development, from helping Africa to bridge the digital divide to supporting the global south in building independent AI computing capacity. We have always believed that ensuring every country can find its place in the intelligent age is confidence the world needs most. And this ray of light is precisely the answer that a bewildered world is searching for.
Shared development, that's a great one. Thank you very much. Xiaolu, how about you? What should we be looking out for in 2026?
Well, yes, I will be I will be more, let's say, focusing on the whether this world will become more and more, let's say, peace, and also China can bring, more and more people to China. China can, provide more and more opportunities for investors and business people. Because, maybe in the next couple of days, the NPC session will discuss the draft law of the National Development Planning. And in that new law, well, one of the kind of a new point is that it will combining the government opinion with the industrial association. So that means in the future, when China is making federal plan and even this kind of a long-term plan, China will incorporate more and more ideas from business people, from industrial sectors. So that's the signal that China will becoming more open and will be providing more opportunities for these business people and investors. So I'm confident, and I think more and more people who are closely watching China should also be confident.
Thank you. Simon, how about you?
Well, inside the government work report, we see that the GDP growth target is set to be around 4.5 to 5%, which is slightly more measured than a lot of people might expect it. And employment targets are similar to previous years. So if you compare it with past years, the overall tone is quite steady. And I think that's actually intentional because in today's global environment with geopolitical tensions, trade uncertainty, and economic volatility, stability becomes a very important signal. It tells businesses, investors, and international partners that policy direction in China remains predictable. So when we think about trends to watch in 2026, I think the key question is really how China maintains that stability while still pushing innovation and growth. And actually tomorrow there is a press conference on diplomacy, which is also a very important moment that everyone is watching. Questions about trade, geopolitics, and global cooperation are probably going to be front and center. And I feel that this year's press conference will attract more attention than the past years. And I think there will be a lot of interesting signals coming out from that presser. So definitely need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so I highlight every of the two sessions, the Foreign Minister's press conference, and you'll be there tomorrow?
Yes.
Great, okay, we'll look out for your reporting. So thank you, Simon, and thank you for taking time out of your busy two sessions schedule. And thank you to our guests as well. Thank you to Xiaolu from Renmin University, and also Long Chen, also from Renmin University. It's been a great discussion. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned to CGTN over the coming days for our latest updates and analysis on the two sessions 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.